Okay, welcome everyone to the Wednesday, April 10th meeting workshop. Today we have a full schedule. So first of all, we've got a discussion with pairing advisors, prevent and protect benefit program for first responders. When I was at the Maryland Municipal League Mayors meetings, the conference a few weeks back, we got the ball rolling on this. I feel that we need to take care of our sponsors of those events. We need to make sure that we're all aware of what's happening, and the floor is yours. So if you could introduce yourself to the board, everything's yours.
Thank you very much. This is Ron Lewis, and I am Dave Morningstar, and thank you all for giving us the opportunity today. And thank you, Mayor Alt, for the introduction. We will have a presentation that we're going to talk about a few different things of how we can help Elkton's first responders, but really our program covers all municipal employees. Quick little backdrop on Bearing Advisors. Bearing Advisors is a firm headquartered out of West Virginia. We are about, I think, 140 years of municipal experience at various levels, mayors, county, and then even as Mayor Alt met national. One of our board members, Jim Hunt, was actually president of the National League of Cities. So we've done it at all levels, and much experience working with municipalities over the years. Of late, we are bringing in our Prevent and Protect program, and in the 16 states, including Maryland, that have mandated mental health for first responders, we are also bringing in a program that we can bring in through our total package on a revenue neutral or budget neutral basis for the town of Elkton. And so I'll talk quickly, and my understanding is that your police department has done something to meet the mandate on the mental health. I don't know exactly what you guys have done, but that you've checked that box. And hopefully you've done it, and you've done it great. Let me just share our solution, because assuming that you paid for whatever you did, which is fine, we're working with a lot of other municipalities across the country and in Maryland that have purchased something. And then when they have seen our program, not just that it's budget neutral, but they actually believe it's better for their first responders, have went ahead and implemented our program on top of whatever they've done. And of course, moving forward, then have no more additional expenses, because you're going to have to update this every couple of years as well. I won't spend too much time on these bills.
And I'd like to just stop you real quick. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Andy, if you have any questions, let us know about this. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. You know, this legislation, of course, was the sad decline in the mental health status for first responders, you know, pretty much across the entire country. Of course, there's oftentimes municipality bears the brunt of mental health illness. It can be obviously public relations disaster if people are stressed or doing improper things. But of course, the suicide rates are high. They're also elevated among first responders' spouses and children, which, again, I'm not familiar with what you did, but our program also is extended to first responders' spouses and children, which also have an increased risk of mental health crisis versus the general public. Couple statistics, Ron, you can leave this for a second, but a couple of the statistics. Our program, first of all, a little bit about our program. Go back one screen. Our program was founded by a therapist named Colleen Hilton. Colleen had an interesting career. She got into therapy and immediately fell in love and married a Los Angeles police officer. And from that, started treating police officers and other first responders in her practice. She then got to see firsthand that they needed specific treatment. They go through different trauma that the average person goes through. And it's often not one major episode, but what Colleen discovered is that a lot of it was kind of what she refers to as death by 1,000 cuts. A lot of just little things that are internalized, and police officers, first responders, or people like all of us, eventually it just burst. Her program, they created Ally Connect, which is a national program, has been recognized across the country. We've gotten a lot of endorsements, probably the biggest endorsement, I won't waste time with all the endorsements, but probably our biggest local endorsement, not that local, but Maryland endorsement was by the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 89. Angelo Consoli of Prince George's County is a huge proponent of our program and promotes this. Angelo was very dissatisfied with the programs that he was presented after the mandate was presented, because a lot of them had issues. Some had issues where everything was run internally, and he got feedback that his officers perceived a lack of confidentiality. And really, that's one of the biggest failures with what up on the screen there under the 16X thing says is EAP, or Employer Assistance Programs, is they're well-intentioned, but because of the perceived lack of confidentiality, general employee populations use them at a clip of less than 4%. So 96% of people don't use them. Among first responders, that actually goes down to about 1.5%. And because a lot of people feel like if they have a mental health issue, the last people in the world you'd want to know about it are probably your colleagues or people that you work with or your boss. Mm-hmm. It could be tantamount to career suicide. The Ally Connect program on top of that confidential. So everything that Ally Connect does, it's a simple application that everybody carries on their phone. And it provides all sorts of things. I'm not going to go too much into the detail of it, but allows people to do constant checkups. Ally Connect's philosophy is with proactive preventative mental health habits and practices that you can avoid a lot of the serious problems occur by not doing it. And if you think about things like, teeth exams, physicals, mammograms, etc., we do a lot of things proactively in our health. There's very little done for mental health to proactively have those checkups and things there. Ally Connect works with that premise to proactively do it. The philosophy is for a first responder to end their career as healthy as they began it. Now, the program is expensive. And so what Colleen was founding across the country was some municipalities had the budget, but some didn't. And that is when she reached out to Bearing Advisors, and we created a relationship with them where through our Prevent and Protect program, which does have tax savings for the municipality, the tax savings could purchase Ally Connect on an ongoing basis for all your first responders, their families, and really any other employees in the municipality that you wanted to cover could have access to it as well, or any key, limited, but any key number of volunteers if you had a handful of volunteers or whatever that you wanted to cover. Let me switch a little bit, talk about Prevent and Protect, and talk about a little bit of how this came out. First of all, perfect. Municipal challenges. We can't obviously solve all these problems, but our program really helps with the 5 things that you see listed: soaring healthcare costs, financial strain on families, attraction, retention with employment, mental health, and then of course suicide and substance abuse. Talk a little bit about those programs quickly. Health insurance costs. Now I know if you've been dealing with this over any period of time, you know, this is not a short-term problem, but rather something we've been grappling with for decades. The reality of it is it's not really changing, it's not really improving. In fact, it's spiked a little bit in the last couple of years. What drives health insurance costs? Well, I'm going to come back to this, Ron. If we can go forward 2 more screens. A lot of it is chronic illnesses. Chronic illnesses account for the lion's share of what eats up health insurance premiums. And the reality of it is they're not uncommon. A large percentage of people have chronic conditions, and some of them obviously you can't avoid, but some can be avoided with a little bit more proactive tackling of it. If you can go back on a couple of screens, please. There you go. So our program, proactive, we're getting people, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but we're getting people to proactively engage in both their physical and mental health. We feel like they'll lead healthier, make healthier choices, lead healthier lives, and ultimately lead to lower usage in health insurance, which should allow you to negotiate better rates and lower your health insurance. Our program is tax favored, which I'll explain shortly through the Affordable Care Act. Why is that important? Because the program, not only does the program, the tax savings provide enough cost savings to the municipality to purchase things like first responder mental health, but it also provides extra money to the employees who participate and agree to participate in a preventative care or wellness program. Essentially, we've all probably heard the saying, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's really the premise of this. And I'll give you a little bit more backdrop as we go forward, but let me just talk a little bit about what we think will be the immediate impacts for Elkton of bringing in prevent and protect. Employees like benefits. We've all probably heard people or know people that have said, you know, my employer, well, you know, it may not be the highest wages I could get somewhere, but they have amazing benefits. And that's really why I work there, and that's why I'm happy there. And as you'll see with this program provides literally several hundred additional benefits that allow people to access at no cost with no co-pays and no deductibles, and allows them to protect themselves and their families better so that they really do feel secure, cocooned, and you know that there's really no place better that they can go if they change jobs to work and to protect their family. You go just 3 screens. We've talked about mental health. I'm going to jump here. So let me talk a little bit about the wellness program and the tax aspects of it, because those tend to be the most common questions we have. Quick little backdrop, even though it goes back to about that picture right there. Medicare was passed in the 60s. Shortly thereafter, Congress established a wellness commission to study American wellness, since we were all, assuming that we lived to 65, we were all going to be part of on government health insurance. And so that commission met over a little more than a decade. And then from that, a lot of major tax legislation dealing with health was passed in the late 70s. That tax legislation is still on the books today. Things that we're all probably familiar with, having been with employers, such as various pre-taxing health insurance expenses, health savings accounts, pre-taxing your dental insurance. All of those things came through that major tax legislation in the late 70s. A little bit more than 45 years old at this point in time. Hasn't really changed. One of the things in that tax provision was a wellness health reimbursement account. And the way that it was defined is an employer, it had to be through an employer-employee relationship. You couldn't do it, for example, as a self-employed person. But through an employer-employee relationship, if your employer sponsored that wellness HRA, you could set up a program that would financially reward you, assuming that you achieved a tangible wellness goal. And think of the obvious things back then: quitting smoking, maybe drinking less, losing some lbs, that type of thing. Okay. The law said that the employee had to attain the goal, and the employer, in order to govern and administer the program, had to track and monitor the goal. What happened was it very quickly bounced into privacy laws. And employers had a very hard time asking information, which frankly it's illegal to ask. Okay. I'm reminded on a near weekly basis from my teenage kids that I need to lose a couple lbs. But the reality of it is, if I worked for them, I always tell them, you couldn't say that to me or else I'd sue you. And so the program, the wellness program, never died or disappeared. Just the practicality of it being administered just never worked. And I'm old enough that when I first started working in the early 80s, I worked for a large employer. They had a wellness program. Now, I was a kid. I was 21 and thought I was indestructible, so I didn't really participate. But the reality of it is, I saw very quickly that it petered out very quickly. But even they had a hard time administering it, because you always drew that line between, I'm worried about getting either an audit from the IRS, or I'm worried about getting sued by asking inappropriate questions like, employee Piner, did you have anything to drink last night? Because you said you were going to quit drinking, and you do that. We just can't ask those questions. And so for all intents and purposes, they disappeared. They may have morphed over the time to various volunteer programs. At the beginning, the advent of Fitbits, a lot of companies bought Fitbits for their employees and said, do 1,000 steps a day or whatever, and you can win a movie ticket or something like that. So there have been various reiterations of it, but the actual program itself, is defined by Congress in the late 70s, really is laid dormant until the Affordable Care Act. Now, obviously, the Affordable Care Act is a huge, all-encompassing law, nearly 30,000 pages long. Part of that, though, is a portion on wellness or preventative care. And they didn't change the tax law. They changed the definition of what an employer and employee would have to do in order to participate in it and track it. And they changed it from attaining a goal, which the employer needs to keep hard records on, to employee participation. And through the Affordable Care Act, wellness programs became what traditional wellness programs called, now people refer to them as ACA for Affordable Care Act, ACA participatory wellness programs. Okay, the employees, in order to reap the benefits, need to participate. Okay, the employer doesn't need to track their hard results, which again breaches that those privacy issues. They just need to track whether they're participating or not. Through a third-party administrator, I could work for the town of Elkton and actively engage in substance abuse, alcohol abuse, anything else that I probably wouldn't want you to know as an employer, and engage in those programs. And you would not get that private information, which you do not have a right to, but through a third-party administrator, you could say, yes, Morningstar is actively engaged in the preventative care program and wellness program. I could just be doing something to keep a healthier colon or lose weight or something that is not position threatening or job threatening. And so it's a simple participation. And then again, if ever audited, the third-party administrator can easily provide that of, yes, people are actively participating. How does it work? And maybe I can just get a nod or a quick show of hands. Has any of the commissioners or maybe anybody here ever participated in a health savings account or know a family member or friend that had a health savings account? Okay, all right, a couple. Okay, so a health savings account, very quickly, for those who are not familiar with it, is a tax code under the same late 70s tax codes that allows an individual to pre-tax a certain dollar amount with the idea that they're going to spend that money at some point in the future on what the IRS refers to as a qualified event. Okay, so let's say, for example, that I have a bad back. And let's say that it's medically prescribed by my doctor that I need to go see a chiropractor 26 times a year. If my employer has an HSA, and let's say my portion of that chiropractor fee is $100, just use a round number every 2 weeks. Through a health savings account, because that is a qualified event, chiropractor expenses authorized by a physician, then I could have the city of Elkton, the town of Elkton, pull out $100 out of my pre-tax pay, and then it would essentially sit in an invisible bank account, so to speak. But then that would be reimbursed back to me through my health savings account, 100% tax-free, to cover the chiropractor expense. And if I got paid every 2 weeks, it would just be a turnkey thing. I'd see $100 pre-tax, I'd see $100 reimbursed at the bottom of my paycheck because it's a qualified event. Wellness HRAs work the same way. Now, the IRS sometimes refers to them, just to keep all the legal terms here, as SIMPR HRAs, which stands for Self-Insured Medical Plan Expense Reimbursement HRAs. Okay, it's a mouthful, but they're just like HSAs. They work with a defined pre-tax amount of money that they can be reimbursed, assuming that the qualified event is meant. Obviously, that has the effect of lowering, and Ron, if you want to, I don't want to get too much in the weeds. There we go.
That question.
Oh, please.
Andy, back.
Sir, may I ask you really quick, the HRA, the wellness HRA and an HSA, is there a difference where, let's say if I'm an employee and the employer has an HSA, normally that's accompanied by a high deductible plan. That money, if I invest in an HSA and I don't utilize those funds for my chiropractic visits or my dental visits or what have you, that money at age 59.5 actually becomes a separate retirement account.
That's
an
correct.
HRA, that doesn't do that, correct?
Correct. The difference between an HSA and an HRA, speaking to the mic, between an HSA and an HRA is really ownership. They're really two sides of the same coin with one minor difference. With an HSA, as the gentleman said in the back, that ownership of that money legally is the employees. An HRA, the money's legally, the ownership is the employer. And so that's really the only distinction between the two.
So I was going to ask the question, is it use it or lose it at the end of the year?
Correct. Well, with a wellness HRA, as you'll see, we're gonna flip forward. Why don't we flip forward? I think the time is good now. Flip forward to the last screen. And then I'll come back and cover the other screens. I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but I'm going to keep talking, but I'll put this on the screen in the last few minutes that we have. So there's to answer your question, Commissioner Piner, there's not an opportunity to use it or lose it. So the way that we do the wellness HRA is done is the IRS has determined, predicated on the wellness program is they're real programs. You're not getting air. You're getting real programs. For example, you'll have all the employees of Elkton will now have a telemedicine, which you probably have on your health insurance, but our telemedicine is zero copay. So people will use ours as opposed to their health insurance because you typically have a copay, whether it's Kaiser, Care First or whatever, Aetna, whatever health insurance that you have. There are mental health hotlines. And then there are all sorts of programs dealing with nutrition, fitness, basically anything you can think about physically. There's cost-saving programs as part of the preventative care. I tore my meniscus decorating for Christmas. I needed instead of getting an MRI blindly, I went in, once I was told to get one from my orthopedic surgeon, I went in, put in my zip code, the procedure I needed, my insurance, and then I ran the program, and it's a cost-saving program. So where I live in the Columbia, Maryland area, there are multiple MRI places. I found the one that I had zero copay. As I looked at the prices of the other, they were a little bit more expensive, but they all cost me money, but I drove a couple extra miles and got one with zero copay. Those are all types of little programs here and there. There's 200 programs. Now, the IRS puts a dollar amount on it. And so predicated on that dollar amount, okay, they said that is the allowable HRA pre-tax deduction amount that we can make. Okay, just like, and they do it with flexible spending accounts, dependent care. There are all sorts of things you can pay for with pre-tax dollars. For a wellness plan, the dollar amount is $1,173 a month is the amount. Okay, so in this monthly paycheck example, this employee who makes about $50,000 a year is going to get if they participate, and this is a Section 125 benefit. As anybody's ever known, everything under Section 125 is 100% voluntary. There's no coercion, so this employee has voluntarily opted to participate in the preventative care or wellness program. They've done that by doing a health assessment, and then after the health assessment, the algorithms are going to suggest some programs that they should do. My age suggested a couple of things: stress relief, colon, weight loss, and a couple of things like that. Okay, but whatever it is, you'll go through and do that. Now, I'm engaged in the program. My employer now can take the one, in this example, 1173 in the parentheses, the third line down on the right, and I can get that pre-tax wellness deduction. Now, here's the question: when can I get it reimbursed? Well, legally, the employer can reimburse it at any time throughout the year. So if it's an employer, you said, well, we'll reimburse it July 1 and June 1 and 12 1. You could do that. But because you can do it throughout the year, what's the criteria? What's the qualified event? The qualified event is the employee actively participating in the program. And not to put too cute of a point on this, but that is really exactly like pregnancy, meaning you either are or you aren't. There's no fuzzy middle ground. There's no fuzzy middle ground with the wellness program. You're either part of the program or you're not. Now, if an employee opts out, that's fine. They're not going to have the pre-tax deduction, and they're not going to have the after-tax deduction, and that's perfectly copacetic. For those who do participate, however, they now have the pre-tax deduction, and in order to keep it most transparent and easy to understand for the employees, we recommend doing the reimbursement predicated on their payroll cycle. If you pay monthly, do it 12 times a year. If you pay bi-weekly, do it 26 times a year, etc. Okay, and so the reimbursement comes in at the bottom, but because you lowered taxable payroll, and Robert, now if you could go back one screen, go backwards, there we go. Because you've lowered taxable payroll, and it varies a little bit depending on how you file taxes, is number of dependents and things like that, but these are general average numbers. But because of that pre-tax savings, the employee typically saves approximately $200 per month on average, a little bit more for a family, slightly less for an individual. And an employer saves about $550 on matching FICA over the course of a year. That matching FICA obviously could go to the coffers of the town of Elkton, but if you wanted to purchase the Allied Connect, we simply bill an arrears on that, and then we pull that out to purchase the mental health program. In summary, because I know I'm at the end of my time here, This is a great additional benefit for the hardworking employees of the town of Elkton. From a dollar standpoint, we don't really promote it as a budget saving money. We approach it more as a budget neutral, but it will provide some small amount of extra loss. It's not going to be on the negative side, so you can do it easily. With that extra savings, employees typically improve their medical and situation vis-a-vis insurance. They typically protect themselves. Maybe they buy a deductible protection insurance. Maybe they buy something, a catastrophic illness insurance. Most financial advisors will tell you you need at least $30,000 if you have a catastrophic illness. I'm dealing with it right now with my wife with breast cancer. We hit our out-of-pocket maximum in 2023 like that. That was surgery in 2023, chemo radiation 2024. We're going to hit our out-of-pocket maximum, and they're almost hit it already, even though it's only the beginning of April. And so that $30,000 that we got in extra money, extra insurance, doesn't negate. We have great health insurance. It's just it has co-pays and deductibles and out-of-pockets and things that you pay for. So again, I don't want to cede my time, but your employees should feel better protected, better with preventative medicine. Moving forward, you can use our program to help your first responders and not just meet the mandate, but we think exceed the mandate, and not just check the box and do all at a budget neutral basis.
Listen, thank you, Dave and Ron. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm going to turn this, we're going to digest this, but we're going to have Andy and maybe the EPD, maybe if they have some deep interest in this, they will reach out and we'll put together.
Wonderful. Well, Michelle has all our contact information, and you can get it from Michelle.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you so much.
And take your time. You guys can take your time.
Oh, we're good.
You want to get right into your interconnect agreement?
Yeah, this is the Artesian agreement. A copy was provided to the board several times. And basically we need to, if the board wants to approve this agreement, we can move forward with Artesian interconnect on Route 40. If the board does not want to approve this interconnection agreement, then I need to know, because we're spending quite a bit of engineering money involved.
Well, I think what our big concern was, and I think we all share the same thing, was the actual amount that we're required to take out of there each day. And if
50,000 gallons a day you have to take out, that would be a monthly cost of $7,452.
And is there any policy in here that if there is a drought that they could elevate our numbers?
No,
Like
it's
they did
based on the Chester County Water Authority plus 20%. It's a set rate, and the rate would be 4.968. That's the rate right now. And the rate doesn't change no matter whether you use 50,000 gallons a day or 1,000,000 gallons a day.
Well, not the rate, not the month.
Yeah, a minimum amount would change.
Usually,
I'm sorry.
I think he meant, so the agreement that we had now started out at 50,000. Now we're stuck with 200,000.
250,000
Because, why?
because of the demand on the water usage, because of the number of people that are using water, businesses and everything.
Was it the demand that triggering it?
Oh my God! Since that interconnection's been into place, we probably increased our population by 25–30% maybe. It's been in effect that long. This would, if you want to save money, the best way to save it is conserve the use of water. But I don't know how the town could convince the thousands of people here to do that, effectively, so they can reduce their water and sewer bill.
I think we're, I guess the provision that, we don't want to be stuck with. And maybe we need to get Artesian in here so I can speak to Joe D'Annunzio directly. But if I remember right, the first agreement that was done, let's say 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we were taking 50,000 gallons a day, and then when we had the drought, it kicked a paragraph in there that now they are billing us for 200,000 or 250,000 gallons a
They
day.
can only bill you for the amount that you take from the.
So there's no trigger in this.
They can't force you to take more than 50,000 gallons, but if we want more than that, we have to pay for it.
But when you take more than that, now your minimums change.
Yes,
It will if you go higher than what those, minimums are required. You actually need a minimum. You can't have an interconnection that goes on and off like a spigot. You actually have to have water go through it, because it's chlorinated water, and you have to maintain residual fluorine.
The agreement that we have right now, if we could do it.
I'm sorry?
The agreement that we currently have now with Artesian at Bell Hill
Yes,
or Walnut, wherever,
no, Red Hill.
Red Hill. If we wanted to go back to the original agreement of 50,000 a day, because we could, let's hypothetically say we could. Can we?
No,
Why?
because the agreement, we went to that amount, and, they'll require us to do it.
Stay at that.
The option would be, I could ask Artesian if they would do that and, get back to the board, but, I don't believe they would.
Yeah, if we had to up our minimum for a short period of time, for whatever reason, we don't want to be locked into that larger amount for the rest of the contract.
Well, it depends on how, they don't charge you anymore if you have like a fire event or something and you need water, a lot of water for a fire or something like that. But if you needed water for 3 months, for example, for a bad situation, you probably end up having to pay for it.
Yes.
But
we'd be
the irony
locked
of it is you want to have it.
in. Jeannie,
You need the water.
I think the question is, when we hit that one period of drought, it triggered the higher take or pay. And then we were stuck with that back in the day.
Well, it would have triggered it if we took more water. If we hadn't taken the water, it wouldn't have triggered it. We consume more water from the interconnection.
But when that time period ended and we stopped having to take that much more, why couldn't we just go back to the 50,000 minimum?
I can answer that question.
That's what you're saying.
I mean, if you
Uh,
want to see the mechanics of this, look in paragraph 2.1, it walks you through. And once, I don't know how you have a minimum of 50,000 if we're saying that you can't operate on 50,000, because now it kicks in the higher amounts that are minimums. I mean,
I understand that, but we got locked into 4 times
no,
or 5 times
I understand.
the original agreement because of what, Jeannie?
There was a one day, I think there was a
One day?
smaller.
One day wouldn't have done it.
Well, there was a lower flow going over the White Weir, which I think triggered the request for additional water. It was back in, I don't know how many years ago. This occurred, and we went from 50,000 to what was it, 250,000 minimum take or pay. So now we have to have.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this interconnection will not be designed for 50,000 gallons a day.
That's correct.
If you know what I mean. The meaning I'm getting is we'll need a lot of water through this interconnection, not 50,000 gallons a day, so it will be expensive. I can't tell you, if we only needed 50,000 gallons a day, I wouldn't be sitting here thinking about the Artesian agreement, because that's not a lot of water. But if Southfields takes off, I don't think well 4 is going to do it, and I don't think the water treatment plant can do it, or well number 1R can
Yeah,
supply the
that
water
takes me
they'll
back. We
need.
should have known that when we did that. I've never heard that well 4 wasn't gonna do the job.
Well,
Also, I thought
there's,
there
I
was
don't wanna,
another connect to our current system that we could go.
I don't wanna say that well four won't do the job, but here's what I wanna say. The implications of it doing the job are pronounced. When we did the test, the 48-hour test, we affected 3 wells down there. And 1 well we replaced and 2 wells we replaced water pumps. That was for 48 hours. And at that time, we just ran the pump and then the well pump and shut it down. Now they have a 600,000 gallon tank there they want to fill. What would happen if wells are affected? MDE would shut us down, the well field. So we wouldn't have an alternative source of water unless we came from the town itself. And I don't think we could generate enough water to that problem.
Don't we have the ability to connect to the existing infrastructure now, Jeannie,
Oh, you will connect to
Right.
it.
for what's existing now?
Yeah, there's a along Augustine Herman Highway you're gonna connect to. It'll have that well
Right.
connection too, but that'll take water from the entire town, too, and that's in demand.
I mean, I thought we
It's
were
sort of like having 10 hoses and,
Well, I
just
would
can't
say,
do it.
yeah, what I would say to you is, I think I was never, going back, I believe the interconnects are very important to have.
I do too.
We went through that, the pumps up there at the reservoir, and if we didn't have artesian pumping that water to us, we'd had, a lot of unhappy campers up there.
Right.
But I think what the question is if we're pulling, we have to have 50,000 gallons a day to keep at a clean intersection or a clean interconnect, and you have to have water flowing through there. The question comes in, if we pull more than 100,000 gallons in one day, are we now stuck to 100,000 gallons every day from there on out? Now, we may end up pulling 1,000,000 gallons a day out of there, which we could.
Million, and then you'd pay 250,000 a day
We
then.
don't want to not need it.
We don't want to pay for something we don't need.
Like right now, we're pumping 250,000 gallons out of the interconnect. We're using that water.
Oh, you're
But we
using
have
it.
We're-
to.
You're
yeah,
definitely using it.
Well, I don't know if we could have
Right.
produced, I don't know if we could produce it on our own as it is today.
Well, one of the problems we have is high turbidity water during flood events, and that puts demand on that source. One of the things the board has to remember is that we didn't build the interconnection on Red Hill because we just needed water. The Maryland Department of the Environment required us to have a backup source of water for our largest producer, and that was the water treatment plant. So that was the driving force for putting that in. And it cost about $1 million for us to build that line, about $1 million.
And lose
So-
rate. Every time I go to MML, they talk about, once you're over 10,000 residents, you have to have 3 months worth of water for your backup. We do, yeah, we do with the interconnect.
We do. So we're
We
good.
don't without the interconnect. We don't without the interconnect.
Right, I understand. Now, I understand the importance, but you know where I'm coming.
I know.
from. Okay.
So
if
can
we
we,
Just figure that out.
could we invite Artesian here at the next meeting?
Absolutely.
And
I can get
John,
the
review
nuncio.
this, because I just want to make sure that it does. I want to know from their voices what triggers the event. If that makes any sense.
And how we're locked into it.
And how we're locked into it, correct?
And there it is. For example, as John said, paragraph 2.1, each additional 100,000 gallons per day in supply committed increases the minimum daily rate by 25,000 gallons. There it
That's it.
is.
Oh, it
So-
will. It will.
Yeah, as long as we don't get locked into it.
But that's no, you are.
Yeah,
I mean,
And
in
you're
the
married to
future,
it.
again, that's what Gene
we
did.
don't have any
But
flexibility.
that's what it says, you are.
You're married to it. So,
Right, we
That's
don't
how
want
we
an
got the
addition.
system.
yeah, but if you say, for instance, tomorrow you draw 100,000, well, then your minimum take or pay becomes 75,000. And the next day you draw 100,000. So then it
Gene,
goes
you
up.
got a comment?
And I think the reason they do that is if they know they have to allocate that much for the town, then they cannot allocate it to anyone else.
Point.
So they have to hold that essentially in reserve. if there's a chance we're gonna start triggering a higher usage, that they can't over allocate what they have either.
Well, listen, we'll have the folks from Artesian come in.
Yeah, I'll have,
And that'd be great.
well, he'll come, our, what do you call that? Our virtual, you don't need to come in here personally.
I know we met with him from Mark and, Mark Turnbull or whatever, we had that meeting about the reduction in our plan. I mean, I still do not know what we're capable of doing there if these little things were corrected, the turbidity issue or different things like that. We've never gone beyond the initial discussion.
You're talking about,
Our own plan, how much? can
I
we-
don't think I've actually talked, with the regional manager. They don't believe that that plant has the capabilities of dealing with the high turbidity water for any length of time. There's no treatment process that's effective for a plant that size, to do it. That's why one of the reasons we draw on wells and interconnects. You just can't make that plant better than it actually is designed to do. And
I mean, I thought there's people that we met with,
Mhm,
this phenomenal,
mhm.
and looking at how they process water. how
they
treat
operate
it.
really big facilities,
Yeah.
those companies, Smith and Water.
Well, I would like to get,
Plants like that.
I would like to get, at maybe the workshop in May or June. Let's get, see if Infomark will come in with, and I'd like to get Mark Turnbull in here from our water and sewer department and someone from KCI to talk about our wells. Let's talk about the whole infrastructure stuff.
Let's get it finished, right?
Yep.
I
Uh,
can't answer a question, but
how does that affect the Route 40 interconnection?
It doesn't.
Okay, I was gonna say, because if you're gonna group that into a discussion,
No, it doesn't.
we'll never get it done.
No, I think we gotta move forward with this, but I wanna hear from Artesian to
Okay,
talk
that's
about
fine.
what the triggers are. So,
Sure.
but I think the interconnect is very important to have, but we don't wanna be locked into taking, 250,000 gallons a day out of that location, unless we need it. Right? If we need it,
but there should be a minimum that we could go
Yes.
revert back to. I
yes.
think.
Right.
And the fact that we're paying, everything that we're paying for, you're good with there, right?
Yeah, there wasn't much we could do about that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Go ahead,
About what
Jane.
we're discussing?
Yeah.
So with the contract, the way Michelle just read it out, I'm a bank equated to the reserves we keep for a line of credit that's not accessed, so I'm equating that to the water. There's nothing in there about if you reduce your usage back for a set period of time, it would then revert. Because I understand to Jean's point, needing to keep that amount of water reserved for potential usage, but that may be something to mitigate the permanency that you're talking about.
It's a good point.
That's a very good point. Add something that says we have capability.
Yeah, at some point, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6, but
Yeah,
if you show that your usage needs are not going to be at that level for a sustained time, you could ask for it to revert.
Maybe, I understand Jean's point too, about allocation, but maybe we can find a common solution.
We will. Gene, I'm gonna put you on the floor real quick. And then Danielle, you're gonna be next about the MOU. Come on down.
Let's study up with that.
I know it
I
was
was gonna
all,
talk about that flood study. Forgot about it.
Hello.
hey, listen to this. I think it's.
We need to
You have strong.
we need to fix these chairs.
They're all different, you know.
You can buy new hydraulic things. for
Yeah.
them.
Oh, wow.
So Gene applied for a grant. Gene applied for a grant to do a flood control study.
Okay, that's better.
And we were awarded the grant and we got 4 proposals back. And, we're not gonna take any action today, but I'd like to get a consensus of the board so we can take action next Wednesday. And maybe we can give the nod because we're always on crunch times with grants, as we know.
Yeah, this grant, was already extended, I guess, from previous years, and when we were awarded it, they said it has to be completed by September 31st. No extensions. Must have been some leftover money or something they had. So I sent a request for proposals to 12 firms, and this was a flood study, grant to fund a study only. Not design construction, design build, anything like that, but the study only with alternatives for projected mitigation in different areas with respect to the study. Sent to 12 firms, received 4 proposals on March 29th, which is the deadline to submit the proposals. The proposals we received were from KCI, Verdantis, CPJ, and Bayland. 2 of the proposals were for amounts under the $100,000, which is the amount of grant we received, and 2 proposals exceeded that amount. Of the 2 that we could accomplish with the grant funding that we received, KCI's proposal came in at $89,761.20, and Verdantis came in at $98,900.
You say Verdantis, spell it.
Verdantis, Verdantas. It used to be Duffield.
Okay.
CPJ came in at $135,820, and Bayland came out at $151,400. I gotta admit, Bayland was impressive. If we had extra 50,000, I'd recommend we go with them, but, if you wanted to keep it to what the grant amount was, it's between KCI and Verdantis. I had been in contact with with Sasha Land at DNR about these proposals when we discussed them, and both KCI and Verdantis could do the project. I was probably leaning more towards Verdantis doing it, and James Taylor used to work for KCI. James Taylor is the gentleman that went to Duffield, which has then been, I think, acquired by Verdantis, or was morphed into an engineering firm called Verdantis. And they are, they're basically an environmental firm. They have a lot of experience with this type of work. They do a lot of flood studies and watershed studies and that sort of thing. I was a little surprised with KCI's submittal because one of the things they mentioned was a Big Elk Creek sediment study that they accomplished in 2019 for SHA. And we weren't aware of that study. And when I requested a copy of the study to see what they did to compare it with other projects, what the other firms had done, I was told, well, it's limited for internal use and not intended for further distribution. If they give it to us, we can't share it with anyone, which was odd for a sediment study, but okay. I don't know if this was a requirement from SHA when they engaged their services to do this, but this was back in 2019, and this is the first I'm hearing of this. Yeah. So I
They
thought
weren't required to inform us on this?
this is the first, when I read it in their proposal, I said, well, this is something I didn't know about.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we need to look at for this flood control study. So I don't know what it means if it's not for intended for further distribution. Does that mean it can't be used to inform the study, or I don't know. So
this is something they didn't pay for.
this is something that SHA must have paid for, and it had to do with the Delaware Avenue Bridge.
Oh, the state highway.
State Highway paid for this, yeah. And nobody knew about it, and I'm having trouble getting it to see what they said. So I was a little disappointed in that, and so I was.
Highway make that available, or Dirty Truck?
I asked them. I said yes, I would like to see it. Please send it to me. So I'm waiting for that. So, that being said, I was kind of leaning towards Verdantis.
Earl, you had a comment?
So my
But I
question
would
was,
be happy to send you both proposals
Yeah.
if you want to look at them yourself.
my question was when you first, I was waiting for you to finish. Number one, how many times have we had a study on this flood, study? And how many times has KCI done the study and got paid for the study?
They haven't done it.
Okay,
Or
but,
not for us.
well, how come It's been
Back
gone.
in two
years and
thousand,
years.
when was it? When we did the Army Corps of Engineers study.
I don't
Okay,
know.
Yeah,
well,
so-
my main thing is that I don't want to be paying for something that we already paid for.
No.
Okay, so,
But I was curious as to why that wasn't discussed in the proposal, that they could link to the information that they had already had, and maybe that's why their proposal was less than Grandis, but none of that was brought out.
yeah.
So,
Well, you know, Gene's looking for a consensus and I reviewed them, before the meeting in with Gene and I'm okay with the variances. They're under the grant amount. They checked all the boxes. And I feel comfortable in my consensus to go that direction. If,
awesome.
you good with it?
It's being covered.
It's being covered. You got the consensus.
Unless you got an extra 50 grand, and then I would award.
Yeah, I know you want it.
They did a lot of
Okay.
detailed work.
Thank you, Gene.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Danielle, please tell us about the MOU. I want to bring you up here. I know it wasn't the MOU with the Alliance for this Arts Council grant, moving forward, and we took all the economic development, stuff out of it. And I think there was one little spot there that was mentioned. I mean, the town of Elkton has given the Alliance over $100,000 for the last 25 years, I guess, right? Or
Yeah.
26 or 27 years. I don't see that changing,
Mhm.
right? And, so is there anything I'm missing in what?
No, so you're exactly right with your statement. We've been working on this for a couple of years now, and the directive of, economic development, either living with the Alliance or the town, kind of created multiple drafts of this document. The recent one that you guys had received last week is the bare bones requirement for Maryland, our Main Street designation. So Main Street America, Maryland Main Street designation that Elkton has, and the Alliance maintains, as well as the Arts and Entertainment District. So the language that you see there comes directly from DHCD, and we did not alter anything about that except, to your point, Rob, the 100. And the reason we put that in there is the original language said 1/3 of your operating budget. Our operating budget, as yours, has increased significantly. And for us to put 1/3 in there, we felt was actually obligating the town to more than 100,000 in the coming years. So in lieu of that, knowing historically, we've relied on 100,000. If we were to ask for more, that would always be subject to approval. We didn't want to have the town obligated to that 1/3 of our operating budget, which is truly what Main Street Maryland asks for. So that's why we added that 100 and took out and extracted the 1/3 operating budget language.
Now, at one time, wasn't Maryland Main Street like a 50,000? You had to have at least 50,000?
I would have to revert to those
Yeah.
older than I
Okay.
to say. I know our operating or our designation from the town has always been between 125 and 75.
Mhm.
Those, I think, are the high and lows of what we've always received from the town historically.
But I think when we upped it, because we felt as though we wanted to give more, not because of the budget.
Yeah,
We upped it up 50,000 to bring it up to 100 at one time.
I don't think it was, well, that might be forward, yes.
Yeah, and then.
I think you're talking back in Jim Krause's days, yes.
So,
Well, I remember Chofasona reduced it to 75. I don't remember it being reduced to 50.
We brought it up to 100 because we just felt as though we needed more.
Well, I can tell you, if we didn't have your 100,000, we would not be able to operate.
Yeah.
I mean, we're skating by when we did our budget for 2024 fiscal year 25. I mean, we're looking at an operating budget that gives us cushion of about, I can tell you, $386.
Well, I'm
So-
saying it wasn't because it was required, we upped it because we felt as though
Sure,
you guys needed.
sure.
So I'm just.
Well, listen, I'm gonna budget $100,000.
Right.
Put it in.
But if you're required to show Maryland, more monetary value, can't you maybe include support services like DPW and DPW? Maybe the cost of that as a support?
I mean, I don't know because we're not directly paying for that. It's not going in our QuickBooks, if you will. So, you know, we're not taking the cash in, we're not dispersing it, we don't have
Yeah,
fiscal responsibility. So I think there's a barrier there.
I didn't know if you.
Yeah.
Show.
We do keep our in-kind, as to your point, through volunteer hours and in-kind, either sponsorships or time or, you know,
I just meant
study.
here specifically for the thing,
sure.
as a, it does have monetary value.
Oh, yes.
So I didn't know if that could be counted towards whatever it is you want to show them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something they've requested out of it, and I know that they've, you know, they've added language such as, you know, a shared space to operate out of and things like that. They didn't speak specifically to any support services though.
Okay.
So we need to get that thing signed.
Yeah, so the urgency really is, we have our Maryland State Arts Council operating grant that we apply for and receive annually. It's very important to our operating budget and bottom line. It's about $18,000, and we were notified that if we did not have an MOU, we would no longer be able to receive that grant. Last year, we skated by. We had a letter that and a draft of an MOU and let them know we were working through it. And their comment was they're not going to accept any more drafts or letters. It has to be a formal MOU agreement, which is why we kind of stripped it of all the bells and whistles and brought it back down to the bare bones.
Lou, if you and John could just take one final peek of it, and if the board's okay, I'll autograph it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We will be very grateful because we're waiting on the email saying you didn't include the MOU with your grant submission.
I really thought it was done, to be honest.
But now, hopefully, right?
Maybe.
All right. Thank
Did you guys need us today? You were here for the other venue, right? Very good. Anybody have anything to say to that?
Well, I wanted to congratulate Officer Devine for next week.
Next week.
We're looking forward to it. Thank you for earning that. That's awesome. I only have two quick things. Dan, there's tires down in Meadow Park that have been sitting along right out front where the Elkton used to keep their trailer, like a pile of tires.
I'll follow up. He's not online.
No, I didn't say I didn't see him.
It's good times.
Yeah, I was just wondering why they're still there, why are they
They
there
found
at
the
all?
the tires and then that trailer. out. Probably did.
No, they're
The
still there.
email that, Mark.
And down on Main Street, we have a couple awnings down there we talked about briefly, that are in need of replacement, but until they're replaced, especially Annie's, could we at least ask the owner to remove it?
After you brought that up at the last meeting, I talked to Chip about it and asked him to address the issues with the awnings on Main Street. So I don't have an update for you, but I did follow up with Chip after you mentioned it.
I was gonna suggest and put it right back onto the Alliance to,
Yeah, we've reached out to Dr. Mulvey, but,
Yeah,
Addie's it's harder.
yeah,
So, and you know, with you guys having,
and the pallet and page took those off.
yep, they took theirs off.
Took theirs off.
We're getting closer, but, power washing would do wonders for, I think, some that are out there.
I bet you Will Muller would donate his time one day and come clean the fronts of all buildings.
I think Annie's needs to come down.
Can we not just remove that? Because it's, I mean, obviously, they're not gonna keep it. It's almost a health hazard at this point.
The one at Andy's, we could send them a letter to remove it if we thought it was a hazard.
Or else we're gonna remove it.
I don't think we should remove it off private property.
I just wondering if we could do that.
John, what are you thinking?
I agree with you. I mean, and we can get a court order if we need to, but
Yeah, we should just ask him to remove
yeah,
it.
that first up, I would ask them to do it. If they don't,
But shouldn't we give them a time limit to get it done?
We know the owners, we have the owners' information.
right? Yeah, now John Mulvey may be a little slow to respond. He just had surgery. So he'll be out of commission for a
The
minute.
Alliance, what is the membership of that now?
So because we went to a 501c3, we are not allowed to use membership, but we have community partnerships. We just rolled that out at the end of October because we had to wait on the 501c3. Historically, we had about 85 members. Right now, I think we're up to 50 with what we just reached back out for. So we intend to exceed what we
So how often do you all meet collectively?
As far as the group at large, we would do it annually, but because it's now community partnerships, we're not required to. And that's been difficult in the past as well.
And I know we don't have a community enforcer for parking from the town of Elkton. And I think one of the clients had spoken to us about parking. But you know, I go through there quite often, and there's a lot of shops that have owners actually park downtown in front of their shops and this, that, and the other. This is something that probably happened moving forward. But don't they ever think there's some other place to park and let their clients come in and park? We went through this issue some time before, and it probably will remain as is, but you know, they have to give some consideration to the town of Elkton and not always come in there solely or with somebody else talking about the absence of parking downtown.
Yeah, we've spoken to a lot of the property owners that have rentals because we find that sometimes it's the tenants that are parking on the street, not so much the business owner. I'm pretty sure we've got business owners figured out. I don't want to speak too confidently, but I don't think that's the issue. I think it's more the people who live in the apartments not parking in the municipal lot and parking on the street. So we try to keep an eye on that. I will say since the we're not monitoring the meters anymore, that's, you know, that's not an issue, but it makes it a little harder to identify the individuals. So we have to rely on the property owners to make sure their tenants are doing that.
Okay.
And I will say, I think it's gotten better, but with the Mini Haynes building taking away a lot of those parking spaces, the crunch is being felt more. So even if it's not owners or residents, we're finding parking to be a little more difficult.
Rob, anything?
No, I don't have.
Okay, we've got the Rotary Proclamation. Michelle, you'll work on. Rob will present it on Friday, I think you mentioned to me. And we got the MML dinner coming up next week, but we're going to meet Wednesday before the MML dinner. So I'll remind everyone next Wednesday about the dinner. It's Thursday, the
18th.
Rotary is the 100th year of Rotary. They're having a little event and I'm not even sure exactly where it's at, but it's down Elk River. Okay, I'll bring up these other couple things next week. I guess with that, I don't see anyone on the screen have anything to say for the good of the town?
If you'll hold on, I think Chip is trying to speak.
Chip, can you hear us?
No, I had got a message to unmute. I was stepped out of the office for a minute, so I just unmuted. I don't really have anything.
Oh, okay. Well, the question was, we want to see if we can get the awning down on that Annie's property. It looks like it's leaning a little bit, so it'd be nice if we could figure out how we could get that off of there.
Yes, the owner has been sent a letter. It went out last week. I'll call him and follow up because I've worked with him quite a bit.
Very good. That'd be great. Appreciate it, man.
Okay.
Chip, while you're still there, have you had a relationship from the proprietors of Crave? I spoke to a gentleman once. As a matter of fact, I think everyone on the board was addressed. I don't think anyone has been addressed with any issues in the past week or so. So if you have not heard from that individual, they must be satisfied with what I told him.
I'm sorry. I have a hard time hearing.
I think he said.
We'll let you know. I'll stop by your office.
Okay.
No problem.
All right, meeting adjourned.